Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution.
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 You want a revolution?
You say you want a revolution?
Revolution. The revolution.
It's going on right now.
Welcome to The Revolution, the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we ask today's most successful entrepreneurs to share the tools and strategies they use to build relationships and connections to grow their revenue. Now, your host for The Revolution, John Corcoran.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here. I'm the host of this show. For those of you who are new and haven't heard it before, go check out our archives because we've got some great episodes with smart CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs of all kinds of different companies, ranging from Netflix to Kinko's, YPO, EO, Activation Blizzard. And relevant to today's conversation, go check out my interview with PG Geldenhuys, I think is how you say his name. It's he is a similar to today's guest. He's also in the travel and hospitality industry. And I think you'll enjoy that conversation as well. Also in the world of entrepreneurship and EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, which today's guest is as well. And his name is Saahil Mehta. And Saahil is a longtime entrepreneur, author, speaker, diamond trader, hospitality industry entrepreneur and CEO and coach, and mountaineer. He's climbed some of the world's tallest mountains. We're going to talk about that, and also how he was raised kind of a child of the world, lived in a lot of different countries. So we'll talk about that as well in his background. And this, of course, is brought to you by Rise 25, where we help B2B businesses to get clients referrals and strategic partnerships with Done For You podcasts and content marketing. If you are listening to this and ever thought about starting a podcast, I say yes, it's one of the best things I've ever done. Get to talk to interesting people like Saahil. So go check out our website, rise25.com, if you want to learn more about it. All right, Saahil, such a pleasure to have you here. And let's start with your upbringing. So I don't know if you describe yourself this way, but you're a child of the world and also a child of entrepreneurs. Was your father, would you consider your father an entrepreneur? I know he had a diamond trading business. Was he an entrepreneur when you were a child, when you were growing up?
So first of all, John, pleasure to be here. My dad, he was actually working for another company, and his entrepreneurial journey started at the age of 55 when the company, told him that that's our retirement age. But he said, no way, I don't want to stop working. I want to continue. So that's when it started. However, growing up in a family where, I saw my dad give it all, I always thought he was one of the business owners because that's how he treated the business. He would bring customers home for dinner, so I'd get to mingle with them. He'd be working hard on the weekends, late nights. So, if from the outside, I always thought he was an entrepreneur. I had no idea until he told me he had to retire.
And what was that transition like? 55 is a mature age to be starting a business for the first time. Was it a struggle, or because he treated it like a business for so long, was it just a natural evolution?
It was definitely hard initially. I was there by his side, helping him in the early days. Before, he was focused in certain areas. Now he had to manage everything, including accounts and, paying salaries, etc. But what was amazing was because he had been in the same industry and predominantly in the same company his entire career, he had built a solid reputation. And so a lot of his clients said, you know what, we're going to support you. We're going to continue buying from you. We're going to make sure that you don't find it to be a struggle to start on your own. And it's those relationships that really helped make that transition a little bit easier.
And for you, now you had studied electric and mechanical engineering. You had also been an investment banker and eventually found your way into the family business, so to speak, working for a friend in the diamond industry. But that was a little bit challenging. It was a strain on the friendship. Talk a little bit about what that was like for you.
Coming in, I guess I was working in a professional environment when I was an investment banker. So things were clear, or at least as more clear than it was in a family-run business. And when I entered this friend's company, they talked about opportunity and it all sounded great. And I said, let's give this a shot. But the reality was I had this glass ceiling above my head. And I don't know if it's the upbringing that I had or the drive that I had to just keep growing. It just meant that our expectations were very different from one another. And when our expectations were mismatched, it causes a rift in our friendship. And, it got to the point where, you've heard it, you stretch that band so wide, you either have to let go or it's going to snap. And so I decided that the friendship was not replaceable. Work definitely was. And so although it was a difficult decision at the time, I called him up. It was very emotional. And I told him, I said, look, I value this friendship far more than I value the opportunity that you've given me. So I'm going to quit. And that's the only way I see how we can salvage the friendship.
Yeah.
And 15 years later, we're like this. We're tight. We're solid friends again. So it worked.
That's nice. That's nice. I'm fascinated by people that are able to bounce around in different industries and different careers. I've done that quite a lot in my career as well. Worked in different industries, from the entertainment industry to politics to law to podcasting. Personally, I know that I attribute part of it to the fact that I moved around a bit as a kid. So I'm comfortable moving into a new environment, even in the middle of a school year where you don't know anyone and you have to come in and make friends. And I feel like that's kind of like starting in a new industry. So I just throwing that out there. Do you feel that perhaps for you, being multicultural, you are of Indian descent, grew up in Belgium, lived in 5 different countries, is that part of what makes it more easy for you to to work in different industries?
I'm sure there's a part that's played here. Wherever I've lived in the world, I've always made it a point that how do I blend in with the community, and how do I make friends, build relationships, understand the culture. And I find if you had used that same methodology and mindset, just like you said in a new business, it's all about getting integrated. And so perhaps someone else who may not have the same skill set would take longer. I guess I was able to do that a little bit faster. But I'm not going to lie and say that it was easy. There's still a steep learning curve, but the drive was there. And I feel that as entrepreneurs, we're kind of wired to want to succeed. And so we give it all. And I do believe that helped as well.
Yeah. And one of those pit stops along the way was real estate. You, like many others, were dramatically affected by the 2008 downturn. Take me back to that time period. What was that like for you? What happened?
So we were diversified in real estate, primarily in development in the US, in Europe, as well as in the UAE, which is where I live right now. And I thought, okay, we're kind of spreading the eggs. If one market goes down, at least we have the other two. But as we all know, 2008 wasn't geography specific. It was it was the entire planet. It was hard. It was really hard. I mean, I saw everything that I worked towards get wiped out. I saw the family wealth get cut in half. In addition to that, whatever was left, a lot of it was illiquid. So, and when you do try to sell during those times, you just get
pennies on
lowball,
mm-hmm.
Big time. So it was very difficult for the family. But what it did do is really hurt my confidence. It took me a long time because I took it personally that, how could I, Saahil? How could you have avoided this? I mean, you should have seen it coming. So I kept blaming myself. And that didn't help at all because I lost my confidence in business to the extent where a very dear family friend, a friend of my father's, he invited me over for coffee at his office. And he looked at me and he goes, Saahil, when you came to me back in 2006, I was ready to invest with you. What's going on? I mean, you've lost that fire. And this was many years later. And so that was a bit of a wake-up call for me. It was hard. But, fortunately, I put my head down and that wake-up call just meant, it started making me look at things in a different way. And I had to forgive myself because I had to repeat and constantly tell myself that, hey, it wasn't just you.
Mm-hmm.
It was beyond your control.
Yeah. Yeah. It was after that 2008 crash that you joined your or that you founded your company, ResNet World. Again, in another industry. What was the origin of that? And what does it do today?
Sure. So what it does simply, it just enables independent hotels to be visible across all electronic platforms and control it from a single point. So it's just easier for the hotels to manage. How it came on me, after this crash, I didn't really know what to do. And, my dad said, "Hey, why don't you come work with me?" And so I started working with him. And although our relationship was like this, solid, in terms of the love and for one another, in the workplace, it was quite different. Him and I, it's like two lions in a pride, right? It doesn't always work. And we used to butt heads a lot. And ultimately, he's the patriarch. He's the one who's got the keys to the coffer, as they say. And it's his way or the highway. And so I was just looking for anything. And I had a friend who was in that space, and he came to me and he said, "Look, I know a company that wants to expand in the UAE. Why don't you help me find someone and we could broker a deal?" And so I said, "Okay, well, let me understand what it is, because if I'm putting my name on the line and introducing you to someone, I have to know what it's all about." And then the more I studied the business, I realized that, hey, this is actually a pretty attractive business. Now, I don't know if it's me just searching for something because I wanted a business beyond working with my father, or whether it was actually a good business, but I just took it. And it wasn't easy. We were making losses for the first several years of the business. And when we finally started making profits, a lot of it got wiped out because of COVID. It was a cliff dive. It wasn't even a decline in business. It was just one day on, the other day, oh my God, what just happened?
Wow. And so take me back to that time period. So March of 2020 when COVID hits, or maybe it was even earlier than that, because I heard some in the hospitality industry kind of saw it start to take effect earlier. But what was that experience like for you?
I mean, it went from sheer joy to, because we had our best year yet, to see it all just collapse. And what was hard was, what do we do with that team, right? We're also responsible for the people in the company, but we have to keep the company afloat as well.
And how big was your team at the time?
We had 13, I think we were a total of 13 or 14 people at the time.
Okay.
And so we, myself and my co-founder, we did a quick analysis, and we kind of did a calculation that how long could we survive? We got rid of all the unnecessary expenses, and some expenses you couldn't spend anyway because travel stopped. So there's no trade shows or anything. But we realized that we didn't want to fire anyone, because the team that we had put together and trained were so solid. They worked so well together. And we knew that when things turned around, to find someone and replace them and to bring them up to that caliber would be very difficult. So one of the first things we did is we announced to the team, we're not firing anybody. Now, of course, if someone fails to do their work as per the job description, or they cheat or steal or whatever it is, all that still applies. But we told them, we're not going to fire you due to COVID. And all of a sudden, it's like this tension in the air just disappeared. And since then, the team have given it 150%. They've gone all out because they were so grateful, especially when they saw a lot of their friends in other industries and companies just getting laid off. They were happy just to have a job. And
was there ever a moment as the pandemic kind of dragged out, because it ended up lasting a lot longer than everyone expected? Was there ever a moment where you kind of regretted that decision, or you thought, oh, we might have to go back on our promise not to fire anyone?
Well, John, it was real tough, because you may recall things opened up and then suddenly COVID started spreading fast again, and then they started shutting down again. So this yo-yo effect was very hard on us. And after the last one, I can't remember the exact date, but when things shut down, we realized that was our final kind of, runway. And if once it opened up, if it were to shut again, we probably wouldn't survive. We would have had to shut the company down. So we wouldn't have been firing people. It would have been a complete shutdown.
Yeah. And there must have been times when, when you have an industry or you have a company like that, where things are just not moving at all, where you start to wonder, like, do we, for example, the rental car industry sold off all its inventory, right? And then there was a huge shortage of cars in the year following because so many of these rental cars had sold off the very assets they needed in order to operate their company, but in order to survive for longer. So how did you decide on, those sorts of matters? Like, how deep do we cut things? How much do we just kind of like conserve cash?
Well, John, even prior to COVID, just because we weren't doing so well in the first, set of years, we were a very lean organization, and we were always very cautious on how we spent our money. So we didn't really have to cut much. Our real expense was payroll. And that's the one where we consciously decided not to cut. We did tell people, look, you have to take your leave, and because once things open up, you can then say, I want to go on holiday. Bonuses were eliminated. Pay rises were eliminated. But again, and in some cases, we even told them initially that we'll only pay you 75%. But everyone understood. Everyone came together as a team, and they realized it was a lot better than getting fired. So we did take some precautions, and we did work with our team members and get their buy-in as well. But we didn't really have any assets that we could sell or remove because we were a very lean, company.
Yeah. 2016, you call that the year that you woke up. You were at an EO forum retreat, which is a small gathering, a group of 8 to 10 peers. And you kind of realized in your words that you're not being your true self. Take us back to what that experience was like. What inspired that?
So, we're sitting there at the airport about to board a flight, and I turned to one of my fellow forum members and I said, hey, Vinny, and how can we make this forum trip more special? And, we all agreed to 2 words because we discussed it internally, and those 2 words are no judgment. And John, I tell you, it's like this huge weight was lifted off my shoulders. I didn't have to pretend to be someone that I'm not. I didn't have to be a people pleaser, which is what I have been living most of my life. And I could just be me. And I felt free. I felt liberated. I haven't experienced what it's been like to be me, to be authentically me for 4 days straight. Let me give you an example. We went to dinner at this restaurant called Leo, and they have entertainment while we dine. So, they got some music, they've got performances, singing, acrobatics, magicians, etc. And we were sitting right next to the stage. And so during one of the final acts, one of the dancers, she looks at me and she goes, hey, come up. And, the previous me, who would be afraid of judgment, would have, looked the other way. I would have, picked up my phone and pretended I was busy. I would have,
a call right at that moment.
Yeah, just, perfect timing, right?
Yeah.
Or I would have just gone back in my chair and kind of try to hide. But I said, hey, what the hell? No judgment. And so I went up there, and it was amazing because I loved to dance. So I felt free. And so at the end of the trip, as we're coming back home, I said to myself, I can't go back to the man I used to be. The man I used to be was a people pleaser. Someone who was afraid of judgment. And that meant that I was just constantly wearing a mask or masks. And so I decided that I'm going to find out what's holding me down. Now, I don't know if you remember these old prison movies, John, the ones where they had a ball and chain wrapped around your leg so you couldn't escape from prison.
Yep.
I felt I had hundreds of those wrapped around my leg. And, as a mountaineer, I'm always telling people, if you're carrying excess weight with you, just imagine how much harder it is to climb up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started to identify things in my life that were pulling me down, that were dragging me. And I started to break free from them. Now, that could have been something in my head, something, it could be something with my health, something with relationships or the physical environment that I was living in. But as I did this, I started to get more energy. I started to become more focused. I started to have more love in my life. I mean, just everything just started improving.
Tell me about, sometimes when people have those things in their life, it could be a family member. It could be you're stuck living in a certain place, so it's hard to move to somewhere else, even if you don't like where you're living. What were some of the more challenging decisions that you made that were shedding, as decluttering?
Okay. I was a social person. I used to go out all the time with people, and all of a sudden I'm saying, I love my mornings. I'm going to say no to late nights on weekdays. I changed my eating habits. I went vegan. And so all of a sudden I couldn't share foods with my wife. We used to share a lot of things when we went out for dinners. So one of the greatest challenges I felt, I mean, look, with friends, some people said, oh, you don't come out with us anymore. And okay, look, it's a difference of opinion. It's fine. If there's some collateral damage along the way, I don't mind. I guess they weren't supposed to be my friends anyway. But what hurt the most, John, was the relationship between my wife and I. Because I was changing at such a rapid pace that one day she just looks at me and she goes, Saahil, I don't recognize you anymore. You're not the man that I married. And I realized that I was so focused on myself because I made myself a priority to keep removing this clutter, that this gap between us just started to widen. And we were just on complete different levels, on different planes. And so I realized, it's one of those things that you know something's wrong, but nothing's really happened.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've experienced that, because it's the gap just widens so slowly, but over time it gets wider and wider. So we started talking about how we want to communicate with each other so that we can be free without judgment to express how we feel and what's working in the relationship and what's not. And so we started to bridge this gap by holding each other accountable and being brutally honest with each other. But by agreeing to the rules of engagement, I found that we found this new respect for one another. Our love started to grow again. And today, fortunately, I would say it's stronger than it's ever been. But at one point, it looked like maybe the marriage wasn't going to last.
That's one of the challenges of if you go off and have experience like that without your partner, is how to communicate them and make them open or engage them in the process so that they can appreciate the growth and changes that you're going through.
Absolutely.
So you are a mountaineer. You've climbed some amazing Kilimanjaro, other large peaks. When did that start? Did that start after this 2016 experience, or is that something that you were passionate about before?
So the first mountain was actually 2010, December. And we went a little higher than the base of Mount Everest to this point that's called Kalapatar, which literally translates to black rock. And it was just one of those checklist things, I don't want to call it a bucket list because I'm not a big fan of that word, but it was just something that I always wanted to do in my life. And I asked my wife, and I said, look, do you want to come with? And she said, sure. So we went on this adventure, 12-day adventure on the mountains, far away from any luxury, but what an experience. And after that, we had kids. And every year I'd make up some excuse of why I couldn't go back to the mountains. But after this experience in 2016, I said, look, enough. I want to be me. I want to enjoy these things. If the mountain's calling me, why am I making up excuse after excuse not to go? So we signed up to climb Kilimanjaro, and in January of 2017, that's when we summited. So, and then the adventure continued. So 18, we did Elbrus, which is the tallest mountain in Europe. 2019, we went to Peru and climbed a mountain called Chopicalqui, which was our first mountain over 20,000 feet, where we were using the ice axes. So it was a technical climb as well, and the crampons to go up walls and stuff.
Wow.
And then COVID obviously didn't allow us to climb mountains for a little bit, but we went right back when we could this summer and went to Mexico and climbed the tallest mountain there, as well as one of the other mountains in Mexico.
Now, a big chunk of your time is spent on speaking, coaching, but you say that is your other businesses enable you to do that work. Even though I think it's no secret that, getting established in a speaking, coaching business can take some time, and oftentimes it doesn't produce financial rewards as much as it does psychic rewards and gratification. So talk a little bit about what that's meant for you to spend your time on this, and be able to spend your time on helping others to, declutter in the way that you have.
Great question, John. When I was focusing on what in life fulfills me, this was something that came up as a high priority. And before, I used to only focus my energy on things that gave financial returns. But I realized that, especially during the year I woke up, I realized that life is so much more than just the financial returns. You have to get emotional energy returns as well. And so when this opportunity came up, and I knew that I could share and make an impact on someone else's life, that was exceptionally fulfilling. Because not only was I helping these other people, but I'm constantly helping myself as well at the same time. And, people forget that it's not only about others, but you help yourself when you keep repeating the things again and again, and or you're discovering and researching more ideas and concepts. And so I feel that I'm privileged, and I have the luxury to choose the clients I want to work with, because my other businesses support my lifestyle. And I can't be more thankful for having this kind of an opportunity, because there's some companies that I just don't agree with them. If, for example, if there's a company that's destroying the environment that we're living in, I wouldn't want to take their dollars and give them a talk, because that's not in line with my belief system. And so I have the luxury to say no.
Yeah, that's nice.
And so I only work with clients where I enjoy being with them, and they enjoy being with me, more importantly.
Yeah. One of the challenges of entrepreneurship is that everything isn't always linear. It's not always, as we described, there's ups, there's downs, that sort of thing. As you've devoted more of your time to the coaching business and less of your time to we'll call them the profitable businesses that are kind of paying the bills, as you experience these challenges with COVID, there must have been moments where you had to take a step back or make a decision about, do I go after what I'm passionate about, but doesn't pay the bills, at least not yet? Or do I take a step back, step away from the thing that I'm passionate about, and spend more time on the business that has produced profit, but that is experiencing some big challenges? And for me, that is one of the hardest parts, is making those decisions. When you made this commitment to move in the new direction, and then you have to take a step back. Because I experienced that as I made my transition from practicing law into entrepreneurship. So what was that experience like for you as you had to, weigh those decisions?
Look, when I was starting this coaching, speaking, becoming an author, I realized that I have a responsibility. I have a responsibility to my family, to the team that work for us. I have to make sure that the bills are paid and salaries are paid and we're able to generate profit. So, I told you that my dad and we work together. Now, unfortunately, I lost my dad last year in COVID. And when that happened, I had to make a very difficult choice, because all of a sudden, this partnership that we had became, I became a solo, owner or solo MD or CEO or whatever you want to call it. And I had to manage everything because I don't have other family members or partners in the business. And I realized that I didn't want to give up being an author and coaching and speaking because that's what gave me fulfillment. But at the same time, I couldn't let this ship sink that was putting food on the table. And so to ensure that I could continue living a life of fulfillment, I first ensured that not only was the ship going to sail, but it had to sail faster than before. And so I really focused on the business in building the team. And I was so grateful for the team members that I had because I offered them and I gave them the opportunity to step up. And for one of them, I even said, listen, I want to make you a partner in the business. And once you're a partner, you're not an employee. So you got to think differently, right? Mm-hmm. You can't have the best of both worlds. And once we got the team given more responsibilities and we added members to the team, that's when I realized that, okay, now this ship is sailing again. I'm still monitoring, I'm still managing, but I took away I only am in charge of things which I consider critical decisions, which only I can make. Everything else, I found a way to delegate or, find processes that would help make those decisions. So that allowed me again to free up some time to then allocate towards the coaching, the speaking, and workshops that I give to other people. But there was no way I was going to say, "Oh, I'm passionate about this. I'm going to continue," and start sacrificing the breadwinner.
Right. Yeah. You have to make those difficult decisions. Saahil, this has been great. I want to wrap up with my final question, which is my gratitude question. I'm a big fan of expressing gratitude publicly to those who helped you along the way, especially peers, contemporaries, mentors, that sort of thing. Who would you want to acknowledge?
So if I may, John, I want to split that into two parts. One is, when I lost my dad, my immediate family, my mother, wife, the kids, as well as the staff who come and help us at home and our staff in the office, everybody really stepped up. They could see that I was a bit of a mess, and I can't think of how I would have been able to handle it if it weren't for them and my closest of friends who stood by me, almost every day till I was in a better state. And the second one that I would love to give gratitude towards is Michelle. Michelle is my coach. And, people sometimes ask, "You're a coach. Why do you have a coach?" Well, I say, well, I can't see my own blind spots. And so she's seen me through my darkest of times. And she always made me realize that I can be so much more. She said, she gave me that energy that I was lacking, especially when I lost my confidence. So I would really want to give a big shout out to her as well.
Great. Saahil, where can people go to learn more about you and connect with you?
They can find me on LinkedIn. It's just my name, Saahil Mehta, SAAHIL And on other social media channels, it's Saahil Mehta Official. And finally, they can go on my website, www.saahilmehta.com. And through any of those channels, they can shoot me an email if they want to get in touch.
All right, Saahil, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast with John Corcoran. Find out more at smartbusinessrevolution.com. And while you're there, sign up for our email list and join the revolution. Revolution. And be listening for the next episode of the Smart Business Revolution podcast.